Shiva Om, 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 Shiva chanting our first two Yoga Sutras together. Inhale. Atha Yoga Nushasanam Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha Atha Yoga Nushasanam Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha Hari Om, Shanti, Shanti, peace. Namaste. We take just a brief time to check in with your partner. As you start this new week, what are you noticing? Do you have a particular intention for yourself as we start, or just anything that you would like to report out about your moment, your experience, coming back into this next chapter? So if you will, check in with your partner. What are you noticing? What's your experience this morning? And then thank your partner for sharing their experience this morning. Well, this morning we're going to open the conversation of Yogi Patanjali's Third Sutra. The four sutras, the first four sutras, in the way that we're approaching them and in the way that we're applying them to our own experience as it's unfolding,
these first 4 sutras really outline the whole yogic learning process. And if we really understand these sutras and kind of what they anticipate in the yoga journey, they are the bookends. If you're groovy with these first 4, then you're going to have a picture about what's going to happen through the rest of the journey. So in this third sutra now is the one where the motor of the yoga journey really begins. In the first sutra, as we know, where we begin, according to Patanjali, we're all intuiting and hunching that there's something inside me that longs to be expressed or brought into the light of my awareness or be fulfilled. And although we are successful at living our lives in the external world, no matter how successful we are externally, it is not going to satisfy this inner itch. And the worst part of it is that the more successful we are in the external world, sometimes that success is a compensation for other parts of ourselves that are not allowed to come to the party. In fact, sometimes the more creative we become in a certain area of our life and our life experience, we get identified with it, and then we start to close our visor to what we can do and not do. And yet still, no matter how successful that is, there's something in us that longs to know our wholeness, a balanced wholeness. And samadhi, sama-di, sama is balance, and di is to be in the state of knowing balance. So even the best of geniuses, underneath it all, there's this longing and this urge. And this longing comes from the evolutionary impulse that's actually already in the organism, that animates the organism and gives it its life force. And it's through the organism then that we as individual selves incarnate, where we separate from the one, whatever that might be. We come through the womb, we're in the one with the mother, and then we're born, and as we're born, we're separate. I'm no longer in this cozy womb, this home, this sense of eternal being. I'm now at the effect of gravity and anti-gravity and all the various forces that start to shape our life and our life experience. So in the first sutra, Yogi Patanjali is saying, if you're interested, if you've really got this itch, first of all, you wouldn't have picked up this book if you didn't have it. Because you picked up this book, and you're even reading this first chapter, and it's called Samadhi. Isn't that interesting? You're reading it just like you know what it is. Or at least you've got an intuition of what it is, or you'd put the book down. So, but the fact is, you've got an intuition. It's already in you. And so to get interested in entering the domain of oneself, to explore what our inner being is calling for, we need to enter the present moment. And in this present moment, to get interested, to start to inquire, what is my experience? Atta, now, the present moment. Let me start to receive myself as I am, as my experience unfolds, the as-is principle. And then in the second sutra, as we start this going inside, it's like, well, there's lots of reasons for not going inside. I've got lots of painful memories. I've got woundings from the past. I've got illnesses perhaps in the past that I just don't want to keep rethinking about and revisiting. And sometimes I think if I go inside, there's really not much there, and maybe it's just my aloneness that I'm going to encounter, or my emptiness and my meaninglessness. Because I'm not getting it from the outside, why should I expect it to be from the inside? So we kind of double up our effort to get it from the outside then. But once we make this inner choice to fall back within the domain of the self and the inner intelligence that's already encoded within this individual organism in which I'm living, there starts to be this amazing, amazing unfolding of insight that starts to be revealed through our sensations first at the primal level. Well, primal level, it's urges, and then there are sensations. And these sensations come with an approach and avoidance. Some feel pleasurable, some feel unpleasurable. So sensation starts to lead to feelings. I like this one and I don't like that one. This feels good, but that doesn't feel good. And then there's emotions. It's, there's my anger. It feels so bad that I just feel really pissed about it. But boy, am I allowed to ever to have my anger if I let it out. Everybody will think I'm this horrible person, or I might hurt somebody, or I might hurt myself with it. So we have emotions that go with these feelings that are passing through our experience. And then there are thoughts and self-concepts that accrue from that. I'm a good person if I'm able to manage my anger. And I'm a bad person if I let it out on somebody, it winds up wounding somebody. I'm in life to be a good person. I'm good when I do my yoga. I'm not bad if I let my true nature show. We start to develop these unconscious beliefs. They're given to us through our past experience. I know that if I yell at people, they turn and walk away. So it's not just made up, it's real experiences. So there's a reason not to want to necessarily go inside and take the garbage can off, take the lid off, to see what all has been stuffed down in there that's undigested, that I've swallowed whole, that's actually now living in the organs and cells and the muscles and tissues of the organism itself. And in the emotional body is armoring or protection or certain vulnerabilities or opennesses. So and out of this accruing of all these impressions of self, all the choices we ever made about what would make us happy and fulfilled, and all the choices that we ever made about what's going to be dangerous, and all the things I won't do, and all the people or behaviors or places I'm never going to go because it's not good for me. The sum total of all of those choices you ever made accrue to be what we call the personality. This is who you are. This is what I'm identified with. I'm the sum total of what Don likes, and I'm the sum total of what he doesn't like. So there it is. And we start to think that our personality is just the way it is. It's evolved over through the stages of life, through lots of issues, and because it's who I see myself to be and people relate to me to be, then I think that's who I am. And that singular focus on the personality or the ego as a movement toward what's pleasurable and avoidance of what's painful actually is the personality out of which we are living our life. It arises out of survival. Even the emotions come out of the survival body. Our emotions give us impressions about what we need to do and not do. So out of survival, this wonderful personality ego is just manifesting everywhere we touch. Yay, I've got a house, I've got a mortgage. I wasn't thinking about a mortgage when I got a house. Yay, I've got the love of my life. But I wasn't thinking about college payments for our kid, and I wasn't thinking about all the choices that I've ever made also have consequences. Every choice has consequences. And sometimes I'm aware of the choices I'm making, but down the road as these choices start to take shape and fill up my life, there are the consequences that came with them I don't recognize. Wait a minute, that's not me. I didn't choose this mortgage. I'm not a mortgage paying type person. I'm a yogi. How did I wind up here? Well, I forgot that I was very miserable in being a little isolated monk existence in an ashram. And I had the love of thousands of people impersonally, and the impersonal love of a guru who I was being an understudy to. So I had a lot of vested interest in just keeping things the way they were. And I didn't notice underneath that I was aching for a personal kind of love that I'd never experienced or allowed myself to experience because of my own wounding. And my geniuses came with working with generalized populations, but with individuals, not that great, especially intimate. So I gravitated toward an ashram and built a whole life on that persona, that self-image. And all along the way, there are other dimensions to Don that just simply didn't get voiced or expressed. Everything was predetermined. According to me, Don, being controlled, identified with my life path, my life journey. Isn't that great? So along the way, we become identified with this personality that our life force is being assigned to. In fact, you could say that all the prana that comes into your being, all the creative life force of evolution itself that is coursing through your organism, is pre-assigned, pre-packaged to a future that is going to be fulfilled through the personality and the ego. The ego directs the life force. Where the mind goes, prana flows. So the life that I'm living in now is the life that I've been creating all along the way. All along the way, the choices to do and not do have given this life circumstance. This is the life in which I'm living. But in the middle of this life, if I look at it and I say, this is not my life, or this is not the life I want, or if I'm a powerful person, I wouldn't have created this, I must be the victim to things that are out of my control. Instead of taking responsibility for the unknowns that start to surface, I actually start to blame the circumstances themselves. Well, if I hadn't been born in Lubbock, Texas, I wouldn't have this funky attitude about accents. And, if I hadn't been born in, if my family had been a little different, if we'd lived on the other side of the tracks, or, if I'd really gotten that scholarship in the 4th grade, or if I hadn't flunked the spelling bee, or, if people around me were just a little more open, or if the economy was better, we have every reason in the world to displace the responsibility for my life as it's showing up in this moment to outside forces that I'm at the effect of. And we start to feel like we're a victim to these circumstances. We're a victim to it. I don't remember choosing. And yet on an unconscious level, even not choosing is a choice. So consciously or unconsciously, this ability to use our will to direct the life force somehow has gone underground. It's lost its identity with the ultimate source. And it's identified with the circumstances, the people, and we keep creating the same outcomes and we apply the same behaviors, the same kind of dynamics keep increasing, sometimes an ever-increasing escalation, even though they're not satisfying. Maybe if I do more of it, it'll help. So we're on a wheel. It's a real wheel. And somewhere along the way, fortunately, our life experiences start to wake us up to, yay! Wake us up to, I wonder what that message is. Oh. Yeah. So somewhere along the way, I stump my toe, I break a leg, I go through a nasty divorce, a parent dies, I get an illness, something happens that's seemingly out of my control. And in that unplugging of the momentum of my life, in the unplug there's an empty little moment that's not filled in yet. There's a momentum that can't go anywhere. And in that moment, Heidegger calls it a break in this instrumental complex. I'm living in a complex of choices that all fit together. But when this machine of my life breaks, there's an existential moment where nothing is happening. Nothing. That existential encounter with my beingness in the moment, without conditions, without a future being projected onto it. Something that I've never been before. I don't know what I don't know. And it's a moment where mystery opens up, and nothing that I've learned in the past will carry the day. Nothing that I've ever achieved before, or no accomplishment will ever rise to the occasion that's being called for right now in this moment where I must encounter the loss of my mother, or I must encounter the loss of my father. And for me, grief I'd never really experienced grief until my dad died. And when he died, I grieved for everything in my life that I had never grieved for. That doorway had never opened. I'd been protected and just whatever. But when he died, everything, all the visions of myself, the dreams that I never fulfilled, the people that I'd never really been able to say goodbye to. And so that experience opened me up to something that I had not experienced before. Life brings us to the reality that we do not and are not in control. We cannot control our life force or our life experience. And the ego is set up and the personality is set up to do an impossible job. It cannot control the future. It cannot. It cannot. And so in this existential angst that comes with not being able to control my life comes a deeper source of wisdom, a deeper source of knowing. And that deeper source turns out to be revealed in awareness, the awareness that we looked into the second sutra. Yoga is the selective awareness of particular parts of my experience that have suddenly become really, really important to me. It's suddenly become important to me to open up and encounter grief. What does it feel like? How do I go through this? How do I go through it? There's how everybody else has gone through it, but how do I go through it? So in this finding the muscle of awareness, we're able now to start to look to see what's inside that really I know will make a difference. If I bring the light of my awareness there, if I look at the results I keep getting by the same pattern I keep running, I can predict that I'm going to keep getting the same kind of future. But what happens if I suspend the reflex to make anything happen in that moment? What if I simply take the free fall back inside and say, this is my life. I don't know how I created this, but I did. And if I assume responsibility in full for the fact that this experience that I'm having is part of my own creation, then I'm in a position now to learn from it instead of displace my creativity. I'm in a position now to be impacted by these experiences. And we think that meditation sometimes is a prevention from having to feel the feelings or go through the highs and the lows. But actually focusing our awareness to the way these vrittis unfold inside makes us even more sensitive and more vulnerable and more open to the real human experiences that are unfolding in us. And as I gain trust in welcoming these unbidden experiences, these somewhat fearful parts of myself, or these unexpressed talents that I've had in the past that I know now I need to express, when we slow down and we start to let these experiences in and receive them as scripture, as this is the history, this is the story of my life, and if I focus my awareness here with intentionality and allow myself to be in the inquiry of what is the meaning and purpose of this experience to me, my life now has become an unfolding process of learning through my own experience. The trust deepens. We're willing to open deeper and deeper levels of our unconscious experience. We're given relationships. We're given dreams. We're given people that synchronistically start to show up in our world. The moment you want to focus your awareness on a part of your experience that's causing you to really want to take notice, everything in the universe is going to line up to fulfill your intention. In fact, the universe moves by intention itself. We think it moves by the actions we could take or by the problem solves or the fixes we could bring in. But if we study quantum physics, we start to notice that actually this material universe is not moving by laws of Newtonian physics either. The universe itself is taking form according to some transcendent, for lack of a better word, the quantum physicists are calling it intentionality. The physicist goes to study the behavior of an electron, the single subatomic particle. And with the assumption, the particle that I'm going to observe behaves like this, and when you go there to observe the particle, it will appear that way. And if you say, I'm going to go to the particle and it's not going to be there, it won't be there. Electrons have this bizarre, unrealistic capacity to actually follow the intention of the person who's doing the research. And this is why in quantum physics it's kind of boiled down to a very simple phrase. It's as though we are living in an observer-created reality. We are actually creating what we think we're just observing. We are creating it. We are directing our life force and our intentionality to hold that pattern of vrittis in that particular form long enough to be able to observe it and confirm it. Observe and confirm. So when we go to deeper and deeper levels of how these vrittis and how the experience starts to impact us from our inner world, we start to open up into a profound mystery of the creativity that exists in our core. In fact, the yogis begin the whole yogic journey with a deep understanding of the creative process, what it means to be a human being endowed with the capacity to generate a new future that didn't exist as a result of a past I've been living up to this moment. Spontaneous generation. Where did the yogis get this idea? It came from slowing down and noticing the way I live my life through the experiences that unfold through me. And by studying the cause and effect relationships and studying that many of the choices that I've made are actually opposite choices. I want this, but I want that too, and they pull me in two directions. Start to noticing that these choices that we've made actually generate the life that we're living. This is where the Third Sutra pops in. But before we can really fully look at this Third Sutra and have a depth of understanding of it, we need to look at what this creative process is that the yogis are assuming from the very beginning, underlying all of this. And the yogis, according to the yogic worldview, hold that creativity exists in three different movements. There are three movements in a creative act. Investing your energy in a form, allowing the form to take place, letting the form impact you, and then letting go of the form when it no longer serves you. There are 3 movements to creativity. And this first movement, the first movement of creativity is what we usually think of, at least when I was being an art student and an art educator and studying the creative process and all of that. Man, in art school, forget it. It is very clear what creativity is. It's being unique. No one's ever done it before. I've got to come up with something nobody ever thought, saw, smelt, felt, the way it looked, the way, no period of history, it has just got to come from some spontaneous creative place. So you get wacky, if I can't make something creative, at least I'm going to act like I'm creative. And I mean, there's just, this great culture in art school about how you authentically, encounter your radical creativity and your unconditioned perspective and all that stuff. So talk about a yoga path. You've got to really work to get to that level of inner experience of creativity. So you can't do it, in other words. I just broke down many times and, had these horrible throwing paintbrush fits and, all this stuff. So, well, creativity, I learned in graduate school, was more than just creating something new spontaneously out of nowhere, like I could do that or any of us could do it. When I took Japanese porcelain from a master who came from Japan, came to Penn State. He was a porcelain master. He had studied porcelain. His family had been in his family for hundreds of years in the village of Onda, and he was the sensei. And even to leave Japan to come to the United States, his hands were a national treasure. So he had to get permission from the emperor's office to actually be able to leave Japan, to come to, out of another country. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, he embodied the Japanese tradition of porcelain. And so when he came into the studio, it's no more like take a lump of stoneware clay and throw it across a cotton slab and see what the form is, and like, oh yes, I like that, hang that over a coat hanger and scratch something in it and then put it on the wall and, my creative expression. No. It's wedge the lump of porcelain clay 300 times in one direction. 300 times. And then turn the cone and wedge. It looks like Pepsi. It looks like toothpaste. It's just a fine, wonderful, gooey mass. And then you wedge it 300 times going the opposite way. Now you've put the molecules in a condition so when you put it on the wheel, it'll turn into a bowl easily when you spin it. But what we did, the 6 weeks that we were with Sensei Inoue, we studied wedging. I was wedging. I was the wedger. And then I got to clean the studio after he left. I got to sweep. Everything had to be whitewashed. All the canvas needed to be replaced. I got to wedge the clay 300 times, and watch, and watch, and watch. Finally, we got to the wheel. We started to throw. And we threw these little tiny tea bowls, just an innocent little tea bowl. And, I kind of like them this way or that way. Well, the tea bowl is one form only. It is studying to practice and make one form only, perfectly. We never saved a single tea bowl. We took a piece of dental floss, we cut it in half, we looked at how imperfect it was and threw it over in the clay pot, and then wedged and threw another one, took the dental floss, cut it in half, observed its imperfections. It drove us nuts to throw all these wonderful tea bowls. I mean, they look great to us. It's not a traditional Japanese tea bowl, but it was a great tea bowl. But nothing short of the form would satisfy what was being called for. Well, we snuck a few tea bowls out, and we had a pit firing, and I've got some things that I've saved and hid and all that, but everything else was destroyed. I learned that creativity is not just coming up with a new form for a tea bowl over and over and over again. The second act of creativity is taking care of this form that you've born spontaneously. The first act is to create something, a new tea bowl, a new job, a new posture, a new relationship, a new dimension in my life, to start something new, create a new business. We have infinite capacity to create over and over, lots of seeds. But the second movement is once it's born, it's got to be taken care of. You've got to change the diapers. You've got to feed this baby. It takes work. You make sacrifices, choices along the way. If it's worth surviving, if it's truly worth growing and serving you, you need to make a different life plan to serve it. This phase of creativity is called Vishnu. It's where once we've birthed, for example, a yoga practice, now that we're established in it, we start to stay there. We go into this practice, we hold this practice, we take care of the practice, we start to allow our life to be adjusted, to make room for all the insight that this practice is awakening. And in this taking care of and making responsible choices for allocating life force, we're actually honoring the impulse itself. We're honoring the creative force. But the thing is, once we invest our life energy into making this thing work, and it becomes so wonderful and so satisfying, this relationship, it's perfect. This job, it's perfect. This form is perfect. This living in the ashram for me for about 15 years, it was perfect, perfect, perfect. But there comes a moment where no matter how wonderful the form is that you created, no matter how great it was at the time, and no matter how well it served you through this phase of your life and your life expression, there comes a time where it no longer fulfills the longing to grow you into a bigger person than who you were before. So the form itself becomes the prison. What's now normal and wonderful and what you now know how to take care of becomes something that's confining and constricting. And there comes a time, and it's not an easy time, where something inside us starts to gnaw or nag at us and say, it's time now to let this go. It's got to come apart. You have to let it all go. The life force that's held in this form has to be released to go where it's going to go next. And where does the place in us come to trust, to let go of this wonderful thing, no matter how successful it is or whatever it's been, and to say, I'm open now in a new moment to receive whatever's next. I'm open for life force. I'm open for my intention. Anybody in there, from any place in my whole life experience, I'm open here. I'm looking for clues here. There's that period, that time. It usually starts with confusion and chaos. Our world starts to look like a chitty chitty bang bang. It's just clanking everywhere. It's it's lost that music, and it's like work. And not the kind of work that's really taking care of it. The kind of work that's burning me out. So when it's time to let it go, and through the confusion and the chaos, and in the let go into this void, and this void from a yogic perspective is not an empty void, it's a fertile void. Infinite capacity to generate new expressions, new forms, new experiences of self. There's a fertile void that we enter into, which Yogi Patanjali actually called in the First Sutra, now. The fertile void is now the open moment. If there ever was an open moment, it has to be in the now. So the let go of this form happens in the present moment. It's a release into the fertile void, the infinite capacity inside to generate. And in the fertile void come new ideas, new resources. We start to see, I didn't realize that I hadn't even brought in the whole aspect of, yes, I've been working with relationship, but I didn't bring in the part about spending time together and taking vacations together. That just didn't work. So in the middle, I thought I had to get rid of the relationship. I thought that's what I was letting go, but what I've got to let go of is this habit I have to drive myself and everybody else into the ground. So my practice, who knew? Who knew it was that I had to go inside and start to take care of myself better, start nurture myself, build in times of rest, build in a yoga practice that lets me breathe and feel my feelings, that gives me a weekend retreat every once in a while and go somewhere. So we start to build a practice that opens into this new dimension of self as we're growing into it. We don't really know who we're going to be in this new place yet, but we're following the resources that come up from our inner void. We're starting to follow them. We make practices. I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. And in the midst of that, a new practice emerges. A new practice that gives me a deeper, more complete, fuller sense of my whole being. I have now grown into a bigger being, a more differentiated being, a more expressed being, a being more willing to interact with my creativity and the life force that goes through me. And I've evolved into this new normal, this new sense of self. And in that, the new normal becomes its own, needs to be taken care of, and there's a time where that too falls apart and we let go. This cycle of interacting with the creativity that flows through us is occurring in every dimension of our life simultaneously. It's not like, okay, now's the week I get to just work on relationship, or, now's the year in my life where I'm going to work on myself to be, whole and healthy. Well, yes, this is the year in my life to do it, but I also have a wife, and I also have a job, and I also have all these things that I'm responsible to. So they happen simultaneously, our life issues, the life lessons that are going. Our yoga practice is what allows us in the middle of all of these strands and threads and involvements and engagements and expressions that were going on. Our practice is the place in our awareness where we say to ourselves, I'm going to consciously focus my intention in this area, these vrittis, for my own purpose, for my own intentions, because it's important to me. And it doesn't mean I let everything else to go, but for this period of time, my focus, my practice is about this. And when I go to the mat that hour in the morning or that hour and a half in the morning, I have made a commitment to not abandon anything that arises in that practice. My practice is the context out of which all this inner process is going to be revealed. It will show me who I am and give me insights and perspective in myself, and actually show me how the practice is to be conducted. So the practice is the agreement with ourselves to hold our focus, this awareness, where we want it to go. And when it wanders, isn't that interesting? So what? And if we get hijacked off of that practice for a month or a week or 2 years, and something happens and we get brought back to it, and we say, oh my God, I forgot that that's what I'd taken on. What happened to me? Life happened to me. So what? I'm awakening now in this moment. You didn't lose a thing. Anything that you invest your life energy in with intentionality exists in eternal time, not clock time, not calendar time, not I'm 65 years old, I should have already accomplished this or fulfilled it in my life. Well, guess what? I didn't. I was 5-year-old and I missed a step, so at 65 years old, I get to go back and open up this part of my life and bring it now into the future too. As life goes on, we skip steps, we skip stages, and they're still there. They're always there to be brought back into the party. So our life becomes a lifelong learning process. The way the sutras have guided us, the way we've developed the muscle of awareness through the process, your life actually becomes, I like to put it this way, life is therapy. And the sooner I could get to that, remembering that understanding, I'm going to stop trying to control it. I'm going to sit back and participate with the unfolding of it. I'm going to be directing my intentionality. I'm going to be making better and better conscious choices, but I'm going to get off the hallucination that I'm going to be able to control anything about it. And isn't that interesting? And as we begin to identify with the way life works in this open-ended way, we actually shift the ego's identity. We shift the ego's identity from the part of us that's able to maintain the normal flow of life and control it, as in my ego and my personality. The part of me that if I could do it, I could do anything about it. Usually we go to a therapist for this. I go to the therapist to fix my emotions. I go to the preacher to fix my soul. I go to the mall to fix my retail therapy and feel one with my, we're bilocated in all these places we go. But here, normal flow of life is going on, and that's who my personality thinks it is. It's my job to keep things steady, to keep things growing, keep a steady flow of it all, and just kind of watch for what's coming and like ride the waves. That's the ego's job. When we start to recognize that letting go of the control and staying open to the challenges that start to arise when we take on a new practice and the new lessons that are emerging and the uncomfortable feelings that often arise and unfamiliar feelings that arise, and I've been in that challenge long enough that it really just turns into confusion and chaos. You know, and I thought, oh my God, I'm just really screwing this up. I had a great practice. I started to tinker with it. Now it's screwed up, and I'm going to be screwed up for life. And confusion, chaos, I've done all the wrong things. Let me try to just go back to that good old feeling, put the genie back in the bottle, let me shrink back, you know, to that little person I was before. Once it's out of the box, you can't put it back in the box. The genie's out of the box. From a yogic perspective then, when you've taken on a practice that gives you a perspective from which you can see the way life works, we become more identified with the fertile void, the open-endedness of now the open moment, than we are with the ego, the personality, and control to get results that experienced in the past. The shift to now the open moment. Does this make sense? Are you following? Dana, did you have a question?
So you mentioned about the creation of something, whether it's a relationship or whatever, as the first step, and the second step being taken care of. Is the third step the destroyer?
Let it go.
Okay.
Let it go. No matter how fearful or painful, it's the intolerable feeling of holding myself small. Because for some reason, from some unconscious fear or place of myself, I just haven't been able to let go. I make a deal with myself. Please, inner guidance, reveal to me a practice. Inner wisdom is going to meet you at the level of your sincerity and your intensity. And inner resources start to be revealed. You know, choices not made in the past, another way to do it that you hadn't seen before at all. It's not within your experience, or you would have thought of it before. It's got to come from some other place. And that letting go is the third movement. And this triumvirate of creativity, the importance of the interrelatedness of it all, is actually expressed in the one symbol there of Shiva Nataraj. Shiva. Shiva, whenever you're not saying Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Shiva is referring to the whole creative process. Because always creativity is, is called for when something dies or lets go. You got to create something new. So Shiva, the dancing Nataraj, he's generating a whole life, a whole world in a dance. And in the dance of Shiva, you're generating a whole new life, a whole new expression. You've got all your faculties, all your powers. And when Shiva stops dancing, the world dissolves. The world that you were dancing dissolves into eternal oneness. And the little character that Shiva's dancing on, you may have not noticed that, but if you go up and look closely, Shiva's dancing on it. It looks like a little baby. The whole thing is happening on this baby. That baby is the demon called forgetfulness. Forgetfulness. You forgot that you're the whole dancing creation, and you stopped and identified with this little local personality. I think I'm Don, who needs oatmeal every morning, who's a yoga teacher, who's 65, who's now eligible for Medicare but not Social Security yet. But if I keep earning money, I won't be able to get all those benefits. Am I really going to need those benefits? I think so. I mean, I'm just being sucked down the 65-year-old track, So it's not who I am. Just ain't who I am. I mean, if I'm living with Amma, I've got to live to be 150 years old. Because she's living to be 150 years old, and she's going to, and I know she is. So anyway, that's kind of crazy. But anyway, that's dancing Shiva. That's the demon of forgetfulness. We forget that we're connected to the universal one. We forget that the creativity we long to experience is flowing through us. It actually is our essence. And that's what brings us to the Third Sutra. Tada! I mean, we know that word already. I'm here. Hello? Anybody home? Yep, I'm really here. Got my 2 feet on the ground. Like a mountain. I'm here. Standing here. Like a mountain. And what this sutra says, Tada, drashtuh, drashtuh. This is from the same root word that we already know, drishti, where we put a focal point. When we're in a posture, if you direct your gaze to a certain point, all your nervous energy, all your intelligence starts to go to that point. The eyes, where the eyes go, prana flows. Drishti. In this sutra, it means the seer. The seer, the one that's on the journey, the one that's looking inside, that wants to see, receive all the parts of the self. Like a mountain, the seer becomes, and this word, svarupe, means total or complete. It means the total, complete self, the whole multi-dimensional self, svarupe. It is the self. We, from a yogic perspective, the whole self, swa, totality, the whole self is going to turn out to be this multi-dimensional self. It's not just the high holy Atman, or the Buddha within. It includes the shit and the shinola of being in a body, the muckiness of being in clay, in earth. It's got the life force, the prana body, as a part of who we are. We don't even know at the stage of the personality that the prana body is, even though you may injure your physical body, you may have limbs cut off, you may have a tumor in your brain, you may have, whatever has happened to the dharma of your body on this life journey, your prana body can never be cut, broken, bruised, abandoned, burned up, cut off. It's still there. No matter what happens to the physical organism in this journey, the prana body that lives in this physical body is whole, eternal, and complete, and will always be whole, eternal, and complete. So if you can't do your physical practice in your physical body, you can do it in your prana body, and you will receive the multidimensional effect of your whole self. So there are secrets packed into this multidimensional layering of who we are that we can't know yet. We can't know them until we stand there like a mountain, witnessing, seeing the experiences that arise from this practice that I've given myself to in the second sutra, like a mountain rooted with resolute determination, witnessing the experiences that unfold from my inner world. My true fundamental nature becomes revealed to me. That is the way by which the fundamental nature gets revealed, by letting all of these experiences start to register on the screen of my awareness, on the screen of my awareness. So standing there like a mountain, receiving the effects of my practice and assuming responsibility in full for everything that comes up on this mat. I don't know how I created this. I just seem to have been born with it. In fact, I was born with it. The fetus is already preconditioned for certain experiences before it's ever even born. So I didn't really even consciously ever choose to be that way. I don't remember making that choice, but guess what? My experience has it that I'm showing up like a real shit here in this experience. And I don't even know why I am. I don't know why I don't even know how I got this way. Like, who taught me to do this? It's inside me. So where do I go to? It's like, well, Don, you don't have to go anywhere to do it. You don't even have to know when or where or how. You either consciously or unconsciously made a choice that landed you here in this circumstance. If you slow down and you take responsibility in full for all of the impact on you, you are actually able to release all that prana. You do not have to solve it. You do not have to understand the story of your life. You do not have to go back into every little incomplete experience you ever had to recover your whole self. You only have to be willing to be impacted by what gets revealed on the screen of your awareness during your practice. The rest will take care of itself. And in doing that, the practice that was established in the second sutra, you now have established a place to go inside yourself to receive, to learn as you go. And what starts to be unfolded is svarupe, your true fundamental nature, your whole self and all its layers, and the language which each of these dimensions of yourself actually communicate. The physical body's got its own language. And the prana body has its own language. There are 5 different powers that prana has. And you can actually differentiate through your own organism how these 5 pranas feel when they're active. The first 2 we've studied ad infinitum this month. Gravity and anti-gravity. Apana and prana. And then there's samana that spins to the middle, which is digestion. And there's udana. Once everything spirals in, then it needs to be expressed out. Voice, sound, communication. And then there's vyana, which is another prana. It's the network. It's what Amba was talking about the other night, the nadis, the prana network that fill out the prana body. Vyana is the power of prana to go wherever is needed most. When you start to release prana from inefficient old patterns or old identities, you're actually deconstructing a dysfunctional part of a personality, ego structure, and you start to direct that free energy with your intention about where you want it to go. You now are able to deconstruct a dysfunctional ego personality while simultaneously reconstructing a functional ego personality that's now better able to make choices because it's informed by the light of witness. It's informed by all the experience that you've allowed into your world. So we now can sit in the seat of the self and receive our life experiences, the sensations that flow through us as a manifestation, as a readout, a biofeedback of my deepest intentionality. In fact, my life is the readout of who I am, the externals. So, seeing the whole multidimensional self is just great. Wouldn't it be nice if once we saw it, it was just, forever be burned in our cells and I'll never forget it. And, that illumination moment where I get to this multidimensional essence. But there is also the part about not only seeing it, but there's the part about becoming established in it. Established. Svarupe is our whole self. It is our true fundamental nature. We are multidimensional beings. We have an ego and a personality, and we need to learn to use it wonderfully, creatively. Some people think yoga, the point of it is to dissolve the ego personality. I don't think so. You need it. You need it. If you're going to walk out the door, you need a personality to find the next step in front of you. It's a learned behavior from the past. So it's ridiculous. It's just crazy from a yoga perspective to think you need to take out the scissors and do surgery on your personality like you could. You let the prana, the intelligence of the life force itself do the reconstruction. And so deconstructing a dysfunctional personality or pattern, reconstructing with a new pattern, a new behavior, a new practice, informed by the light of witness. And that becomes like a little bicycle, a little seat of the self, you're ongoing until you fall off your bicycle and you've got to find a new practice, or until your practice becomes confining and it's too little for who you've grown into. And your practice has to keep changing. As you evolve and grow, your practice needs to keep getting bigger to include all of who you are. All of who you are. And that's how we stay open and evolving and receiving through life from a yogic perspective. That's the establishment, the vasthanam. Tada, tada, drashtuh, drashtuh, svarupe, svarupe, vasthanam, 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 tada, drashtuh, vasthanam, Tada drashtuh, Tada drashtuh, svarupe vasthanam, vasthanam, Tada drashtuh, svarupe vasthanam, Tada drashtuh, svarupe vasthanam. Together. Tada drashtuh, svarupe vasthanam. And standing there with resolute determination, witnessing what arises as a result of this practice, my true fundamental nature becomes revealed to me. And not only does my true fundamental nature get revealed to me, I simultaneously actually become established in my true fundamental nature. Once the light of illumination has opened a part of my awareness, that part of my awareness will forever be accessible in its own time and in its own place and in its own way. Hari Om, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Namaste. Well, how does all that sound? Now, just a little kind of a peek where this is headed. This little drama here of these first three sutras interacting, combined with the fourth that we're going to get on Friday, actually are kind of the whole background for what's called the hero's journey, or the heroine's journey. The descent, the taking on the quest for the Holy Grail. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And then the descent into now the open moment. You know, what are my powers? What have I got to work with? And then all the trials and tribulations that come along the journey, the purification, the refining. What is the Holy Grail? To awaken to find out the Holy Grail was already inside me all along. It was already hidden there. Who knew? Who knew? So this hero's journey we've also arrived at in our asana practice, our vinyasa practice. Today is the day in the pigeon posture, kapotasana. We come from this amazing mountain leg thing that we've been developing for 2 weeks, at least in this training, and for life, as long as we've been learning to walk. So here we are. From the mountain pose, we've learned to do twisting from the mountain. We've learned to do forward bending from standing on our two legs. We've done front extensions from the pubic bone to the sternum. We've done both side bendings. And now here we are ready to bring this whole wonderful, amazing mountain experience down to the ground. Everything that we've learned and standing on our own 2 feet, all of life's lessons that have come to us that are embodied, we now come back down to the earth to begin to digest. What was the benefit? What was the purpose of this life I've been rooted in, standing in? You know, what are the wounds that I've encountered along the way? What was I battling for? And on behalf of what? And was it worth it? And these questions come up in these postures, this deepening of the introspective impulse. To go inside, all seated postures are a forward bend. And forward bends are already by nature introspective. I'm no longer standing with all my senses open around me. I'm seated. I've narrowed the view. I'm starting to go inside and look within. And in the pigeon posture, I'm really going introspective. I'm now going into a forward bend over one side. And what do I encounter in the pigeon? All these muscles that have been working to support me when I'm standing now have to let go. They've got to let go of the stress, the little pains, the little bumps and bruises, the funny little way I've got to hold my ankle, the knee thing that happened. Even now my shoulders are able to relax a little bit. And my sits bones become my feet. The sits bones become the relationship to gravity in the introspective journey. And from the sits bones we start to move inside. So, but now that we start to go into the pigeon, the seated forward bend, the twist, even the upward facing boat, using all of that energy from our core and our strength, we're now asking ourselves the question, what was all that battle of the warrior on behalf of in the first place? You know, these wounds, let me go inside and heal. Let me see what the message was, you know. And in understanding the message of my life's experience, I'm able to run it through my experience and share that with other people. I'm telling you this philosophically. I didn't know what my father's experience was in World War II. He was in World War II. He was on Normandy. He was one of the soldiers, one of the American soldiers who got off of a big boat and got onto a little PT boat and was cruised to shore, and not quite to shore, had to keep his gun over his head, walk through the water while machine gun fire and all kinds of hell was breaking loose around him. And he was one of very few people in his whole platoon that even made it through those first few moments. But he made it. He made it. He scaled up those cliffs and got over, and not only did he make it, he kept making it over and over and over again. And he made it across Europe through France. There was a period of time where they couldn't sleep. Everybody was having to stay up, guard for everybody. He was vigilant in making sure that everybody around was surviving. Everybody around had what they needed. I didn't hear any of these stories. I never heard it. He was never able to express it. Ever. Ever. I knew a wonderful, warm, loving father who was very serious and very dedicated and very goal-oriented and very spiritual. But was he open and was he loving and was he embracing? Not in the way that I thought I needed when I was growing up. I didn't know how much personal love I needed from my dad, and I didn't know what happened to him that made him the way he was. The great stuff and also the closed part. And it wasn't until I was way out of graduate school and in my life, and one of the girls in a Sunday school class was doing a project in high school in World War II. And my dad was one of the few veterans in the church, and she asked if he could come home on Sunday afternoon and interview him about his experiences. And so he agreed, and she came, and she sat down with my mom, and they had a tape recorder, and she had her notes, and my dad sat down, and she started asking him the questions, and he started opening up that doorway. And because she was somebody he didn't, it wasn't his family, it wasn't somebody, she was sweet and wonderful and loving, but it wasn't someone personal that he knew. He started to tell his story. And my mom wrote down every word. I have every word he said. And during that afternoon, it was about an hour into the interview that he was sobbing so hard. He had to quit. My mom took care of the wonderful girl who was there interviewing him and explained that he just needed to go inside and have his experience. I don't know what she said, but nonetheless, she excused herself. And for the next 3 days, he was unfolding his experiences, his story, what actually happened, what the events were, how he had given himself to each situation. And after that 3 days, he started to be more open. When I came home, I didn't understand what had happened to him. He was emotionally available in a way that I'd never seen him. There were tears there that I'd never seen before, relative to something I was saying or some importance to me. And I started to feel there was something really significant that was there for me in the story he told this girl, and the story that he had left, that had been recorded and that my mom wrote down. And I started to read those things that he had shared, and suddenly I understood what it meant to not just be a warrior, to not just be sent out into battle, for whatever purposes, however grandiose. What were his purposes? What was motivated him? What got him through the experience? And what got him through was his love for his family. That was what motivated him. That was his intention. That ran through everything that he said or did. And when he took the time to write down the stories and began to relate the experiences that he had gone through, all of them, and they're there for me to read, I started to understand how a warrior becomes a hero. You have to come back inside from the battle. You have to let the battle be over. And you've got to go inside and start to ask yourself, where are the wounds? Let me regather myself. Let me find myself now on this side of all that. And in that, what was the glory? What was the purpose? What was the intention? Was it fulfilled? Is there another way to do this? Does anyone ever have to do this the way I did it? And part of his intention was for me that I would never have to go into war. That's why he gave himself so fully to that. That's heroic. That is heroic. It didn't really work that way, but it's heroic. Digesting the lessons of the journey and then being willing with humility to say, I was wrong here, I made a mistake here. Do it this way. Or this works. It's worthwhile doing. That's how we pass on the deeper lessons of our humanity. And in our yoga practice, we are cultivating no less a relationship with ourselves. There's the warrior and there's the hero. And the hero's journey really is going inside and encountering the darkness, encountering the wounds and the woundedness, what we postponed until we had the wherewithal to go inside and receive the deeper lessons of the journey and the gifts we have to share. There is not another life journey ever, or will there ever be, in the journey like the journey you're on. No one will be able to express the view of reality or humanity in the way that you are. And the universe needs you to hold your place in it. You need to stand your own ground and find your own 2 feet and your voice and allow yourself to be impacted by the truth and the wounding in your own life. And this yoga journey is so profound and so simple. And although we never have to go into any of this whole big deal with our students necessarily about what it's all about, the simple little act of putting your body on the mat with sincerity and humility to let your body begin to teach you already jumpstarts this whole psychodynamic, psycho-spiritual process. That it's your birthright to be guided into and to question and to receive guidance from this deeper place of yourself. And so Yogi Patanjali, right there in the Third Sutra, all you have to do is just focus your intention in your practice, what it is you choose to focus on. And then standing there with resolute determination to receive yourself whenever you can. When you need to abandon yourself, you need to cut and bail, you do it, but then you come back and say, boy, I cut and bailed and wasn't that interesting. Let's see what happened. Standing there, receiving yourself as you are. And weirdly, taking full responsibility that this is my creation. It's the life I'm living. It must be mine. And in taking that responsibility, you generate a new future, a new possibility. Lastly, these movements of the creative process, various movements, the creation, Brahma, sustaining, nurturing. The Vishnu temples in India are gold, and there's jewels everywhere, and oh man, they really learned how to take care of. Once a relationship to creativity is born through spirituality, Vishnu and the Hindu practice of worship and temples and the beauty of pujas and the sweetness of taking care of this divine creativity in symbolic form. Vishnu is sustaining, it's nurturing. Walk into a Shiva temple. There's ashes smeared across the forehead. There's deep meditation in the graveyard or the funerary pyres. It's where swamis go to celebrate letting go of the external plane and to let the creative process go and to release identification with the ego and the personality. Shiva worship is really intense. When you chant to Shiva, it's going to start a whole process of releasing what you no longer need. And boy, does it get going quick. Once your life starts to move you in a direction that's beneficial, the change happens really quickly. That's the Shiva practice. And then Brahma is generating a new practice that's as big enough as who I am in the moment. But anyway, once all this process gets going, the last structure, like philosophical or however we want to call it, intellectual structure, that I think is really important to have a broad-based understanding of yoga as a verb, how yoga works, how it really does bring us back into a present moment experience, is the map of the lessons that we learn along the way. Yogi Patanjali has talked about the process of learning, how we learn, focusing on vrittis, following vrittis. We see that we're not the vrittis, we're not the highs or the lows. We're somewhere in between. We're the witness of the vrittis. Actually, all the lessons that we go through the yogic journey are mapped out in the map of the chakras, these psychodynamic, psycho-spiritual, psycho-emotional centers within the being. And the life lessons that we all go through are identified in the various chakras, the various energetic centers within the organism. And so yogis actually have studied their experience. And because it seems to form in different patterns, there's a part of me that has to do with opening up to love and being vulnerable to the people around me. Well, that's obviously the heart chakra, where I go to surrender and to letting go of control over other people, allow my heart to open, allow love to flow. Well, that would be the heart chakra. The issues of relationship and intimacy and giving and service. That would be, if I'm closed-hearted, I'm going to be stuck back in the third chakra, where it's developing strength, individuation, autonomy, success, and self-esteem. I've got to be able to have self-esteem enough to be able to manifest the resources to support my family, my own health. I need all these skills. Everybody needs them. But to be identified with the power that comes from a successful ego, that I can just have more and more and more of anything I want, and I deserve to have it because I can get it, so I'm just going to keep getting it and having it, and I need to control it for the future, so let me control all these other people so I can keep getting and having this sense of control that I need in my ego and personality. That's being identified in my ego and personality, but I'm not impacted by people around me. If I keep having, getting, and wanting more than what I need, I've got to start some point looking up and saying, well, if I have it, this person doesn't, and am I okay with that? Am I okay with if I take what's not mine or more and stay stuck in that, what about my effect in the world on other people? And I start to recognize I'm not an individual ego self here. I'm related to others around me. And as I sensitize to other people, I'm aware that we're in this together. And I start to get off my own attachment to control, power, authority. And I start to be impacted by love, intuition, feelings, empathy, allowing other people to impact me. And in the love, I open up to a deeper self. So each one of the processes we go through are actually mapped out in the yogic journey and are expressed in a body of knowledge and experience called the chakras, the chakra system. The chakra system is not the only system that charts out life stories. The Kabbalah of the mystical Jewish tradition is also a story of life's journey and the lessons that we learn along the way. The Hopi Indian Sundance Wheel that I was feeling a little bit when Corey was sharing the other day about the shamanic journey has also the lessons to be learned as we come to know our whole self in the journey of our humanity. There are many profiles of what the whole story is. But yoga has a profile of what the whole story is, and it's rooted in the organism, in the endocrine system. The endocrine glands actually behave in different ways in these different centers. So we now have the learning process through Yogi Patanjali. We have a map of the multidimensional self, who's going through the journey, who is this self that's transforming, and what are the dimensions of the self, and what are the lessons that we learn. What are these deep archetypal lessons that have been learned from humanity from the beginning that are there for us to draw from? And how do we participate with evolving the story forward? Forward. That's the story of the chakras. Now, if you will, turn to your neighbor, your partner, and we're going to take about the next few minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, and I'd like you just to share with each other, what have you heard for you? You know, what does all this have to do with you sitting here this morning? The Third Sutra, Tada, drashtuh, svarupe, vasthanam, or any of this whole stuff? You know, what's interesting to you? What are you understanding? What's puzzling? What's totally opaque? Any way you'd like to address that question?
Yeah, well, you've been
Tada, drashtuh, svarupe, vasthanam, Shanti, Shanti, peace. Namaste.